out, and they are now delivering catfish downtown to the Smith's used car and sales company. They are taking catfish down there, and they are now taking catfish out of Nichols Hill, Midwest City. And if you want some catfish, why don't you call once again 424-2384. 424-2384. This is the Clara Luper Radio Show, and certainly it's a pleasure to be with you today. And we are looking forward to talking to attorney Louis Barber. There's some questions that I've been asked by you, the radio audience, that I cannot answer, so I'm getting my attorney on the telephone. It's no secret. Louis Barber, according to many, is one of the top civil rights lawyers in this country. Louis Barber, and I'm going to have the opportunity to talk to him right now. Attorney Barber.
Yes, Mrs. Luper.
I have been informed that you are one of the top civil rights lawyers in the United States, and I want to congratulate you.
Thank you.
How long have you been practicing law?
Approximately 16, 17 years.
Why did you decide to become a lawyer?
I was in the Air Force when John Kennedy was assassinated, and I kept thinking about the words, "Ask not what your country can do for you, but what can you do for your country?" And after his assassination, I got out of the service and went back to school and then on to law school. But it was John Kennedy that inspired me to do more with my life than what I was doing.
Well, you not only have you been touched by John Kennedy, but so many people, his Profiles of Courage, one of the greatest books that have been written. This book is read by thousands of young people, and they continue to be inspired. Now, the Barber family grew up around the Tulsa area. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, and your father was a minister?
Yes, he was a minister. My great-grandfather came out of Arkansas with the freeing of the slaves, came from the Barber plantation and settled in Kansas. And then my grandfather moved from Kansas into the Muskogee area, the Redbird area. And my grandfather founded that little town there, Redbird, Oklahoma.
I didn't know that. What was your grandfather's name?
Elbert Barber.
Elbert Barber,
yes.
Founded Redbird, Oklahoma.
Yes.
Oh, thank you for that bit of history.
Yes.
We would like to have a picture of your grandfather. You know, at Freedom Center, we are building a Black History Monument dedicated to blacks and whites that have been out there on the battlefield. And we would like to have a picture of your grandfather in the Freedom Center.
Well, I have one in my office, and I'll try to get you a duplicate made.
Okay. Now, let's go on with Louis Barber. Your father's name was Reverend...
Louis Barber also.
Okay.
I'm Junior.
Oh, Louis Barber, Jr. Tell me about your family.
My immediate family?
Yes.
Yes. Well, I'm married to Cecilia Barber. She was born and raised in Washington. And
well, how in the world did you get in contact with her? And she's in Washington, D.C.?
Yes.
Okay. How did you meet her?
I was, again, in the service, and her mother and father were stationed in Germany, and I met her in Germany while I was in the service, and we were married in Germany.
Oh, I see. You were married in Germany.
Yes.
What happened as a result of that marriage?
Well, I have 3 children. I have a daughter who is in Atlanta now, and I have a real fine 22-year-old leatherneck who's in the Marine Corps and on his way to Saudi Arabia. And I have an 18-year-old who's a freshman at the University of Oklahoma.
Oh, you've been quite successful. Now let me hear about Reverend Barber's family.
My father had, there was 5 children in the family. 4 of the children were, my father was born in 1899, but he graduated from West Memphis State, which is now Tennessee State University, but he graduated from the School of Pharmacy. And back during those days, they also discriminated against Japanese. And I think in his class, there were about 13, I think, graduated from the School of Pharmacy that year, and 9 of them were Japanese. But he had 2 sisters who went to Ivy League schools and graduated from the Ivy League school. I think it was Cornell. And they taught school. And then my uncle graduated from University of Michigan, and he was a lawyer. So of the 5 children, my grandfather educated, got 4 of the 5 through college.
Well, you're a very fortunate person to come from such an educated family.
Well, my grandfather was a real stickler for education, and he not only educated his family, but many black children who were underprivileged and so forth and couldn't afford a college education. My grandfather contributed and paid for their education. I know he was instrumental in assisting the Ragsdale family, who are in the mortuary business now, way back when, and also the Simmons family. So anyone that wanted to go to college that knew him, that if he could help them, he did. And he was real strong on pushing youngsters and blacks to get something in their heads. And that's going to be the key in the future. That's the key now. It's brought us this far, and we're going to have to continue to strive to become more educated, and knowing how to apply that education is even more important than having the education, because a lot of times my dad used to tell me, you cannot educate a fool, but you have a lot of educated fools. So you have to be able to not only get the education, but you have to be able to apply that in a way that will not only enhance the conditions of your immediate family, but also reach back and help those that are less fortunate than you.
I am talking to attorney Louis Barber, and it has been stated that he's one of the greatest civil rights lawyers in America. Come home to NACP. Come home to Freedom Center and help to build a monument dedicated to blacks and whites that have fought and died for freedom. I am now talking to a young man who's very fortunate in that he came from a family that was rooted in education, and since he's been in Oklahoma City, he's been one of the strong supporters of the NACP, Miss Black Oklahoma, the YMCA, and I could name them on and on. But Mr. Barber, lest I forget, let me thank you for what you have done for the Miss Black Oklahoma contestants through the years, and let me thank you for what you have done for the young people in the NACP Youth Council.
Thank you so very much, Mrs. Luper, and anytime I can, I would ask you to feel free to call upon me, because that's what it's all about. You're doing a great service for these young people in the state of Oklahoma. In any way that I can help you, I'm always happy to do so.
Well, thank you, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm talking to attorney Louis Barber. As we prepare to build a monument dedicated to those that have fought for freedom, and when you visit this monument, Mr. Barber's face will be one of the faces that you will see on this monument. I ask the people in Oklahoma to support us, and you have supported us. You've given us $25,000 to pay that building off. You've given us $35,000 to help to rebuild the building. You gave us $35,000 to help to rebuild the building. You gave us money to put 3 roofs on the building. You put in an air condition for us. You were able to help us pave the grounds in front of Freedom Center. And now we are down to $10,000, and I'm going to ask you out in Radio Land. I know that you will do it, to give us $10,000 so this monument can go up. We would like to dedicate this monument real soon. But in the meantime, we must look at what's happening in Oklahoma City. And one of the reasons that I wanted to talk to attorney Louis Barber today was in order that you could understand the case that will be tried in the Supreme Court of the United States on October the 2nd. And I do hope I'm using the right judicial terms. Maybe I should have said it will be presented to the judges, which is correct, Attorney.
You were correct in both instances, Mrs. Luper. It's actually the oral argument is going to be presented to the United States Supreme Court at about 10:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time on October the 2nd.
The 2nd. All right. Let's start. There are many people in Oklahoma City who do not understand what will happen. I think that if the people truly understand the whole system, the next week will be a week of prayer in which the people will be praying that the Supreme Court will uphold the decision of the 10th Circuit Court of Appeals. Let's start back to the Dow case. Would you explain that to us in terms where Clara Luper from Hoffman, Oklahoma can understand it?
Basically, Mrs. Luper, the Oklahoma City School Board modified the finger plan, which integrated the schools in Oklahoma City so as to have at least 9 racially identifiable elementary schools in grades K through 4. Since 1984, what has happened is exactly what we had projected would happen, and that is the test scores for black youngsters has decreased at a very alarming rate, to the point that at least 4 of these schools now are in the position of being closed because the students in those schools fall below the minimum national test scores, aptitude scores. We contend that this is a direct reflection upon the kind of education and the disparate treatment that these students are receiving, as opposed to those schools that have been maintained on the predominantly white section of portion of town, primarily because the staff, I think the faculty in any school makes the school. And I think that you'll find in those schools in the white section, you'll have a faculty that is much more experienced. I think you'll have a faculty that probably has better scores themselves, better qualified than the teachers that have been teaching in some of these schools that we have. And also, the conditions of the school at the outset were such that they were combining grades. First and second grade kids were put in the same room with one teacher. Second and third and fourth grade kids were placed in the same room with one teacher. And in some instances in those early years, there was as many as 35 students to one teacher. You never had these conditions on the white part of town. It is just proven that you cannot have separate but equal educational institutions or schools. And this is what this struggle is all about. We're trying to afford young black students a chance at receiving the same level, the same kind of education that the little white counterparts are receiving. And I think that we need the Supreme Court to sustain the decision of the 10th Circuit.
All right, then who will present the NACP's case in front of the Supreme Court?
We have 3 attorneys that will be at the council table. I will be one. Mr. Norm Chatkin will be one. And then Mr. Julius Chambers will also be one of the attorneys at our table. At this time, I cannot tell you exactly who's going to present our argument because I haven't been authorized to do that.
Well, I can understand this. Now, these arguments will be presented at the United States Supreme Court in Washington, D.C. on October the 2nd.
That is correct, Mrs. Luper, and let me say, and because of how I appreciate what you've done over the years, from the sit-ins up until this very day, and I didn't even know that you were going to call me today, but let me do something for you. I'm going to extend an invitation to you to be with us in the United States Supreme Court on October the 2nd.
Just a minute. You're going to invite me to be in the Supreme Court in Washington, D.C. You're going to invite me.
We're going to extend an invitation to you now to be our guest when we orally argue Dial versus Board of Education before the United States Supreme Court. We'd like to say that we will be responsible for your plane fare and your hotel.
Miss Attorney Barber,
I think you should be there. I'm very happy to have someone like you with us, and I just feel that your presence will make the difference. And I'm going out on the limb now, and I'm telling you that it's done. That we're going to invite you. You are invited, and you will get there if I have to pay for it out of my pocket. But I'm telling you, we want you there.
I readily accept that invitation because all of my life I have dreamed of being in the Supreme Court of the United States at a particular moment in history. As a history teacher, I have relived court cases from Dred Scott on through Plessy versus Ferguson, the Linda Brown case. I remember when the Linda Brown case was argued, I wanted to go, but I could not. And you're telling me that you are inviting me.
You will be our special guest.
I
will call Julius Chambers first thing Monday morning, who is the executive director of the NAACP Legal Defense Fund, and I will call him and let him know that I have invited you, and for him to send a message, correspondence to the Marshal of the United States Supreme Court and put you down as one of our special guests to be there with us when we present our argument to the highest court in this country.
I'm too old to cry, but I'm young enough to thank God for giving me this opportunity, and I will appreciate it, knowing that the people in Oklahoma realize that this would not have been possible had it not been for the support the people have given me through the years, and I would like to thank you.
Mrs. Luper, again, I just as a small token of how I feel about you and what you've done in Oklahoma City and for this country, I feel honored, and I'm happy that you've accepted our invitation.
Well, thank you so very kindly. Recently, Attorney Barber, news reporters have been flooding Oklahoma City, and they have been looking for people that won't in segregation or neighborhood schools. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to open my line up because I would like to know who in Oklahoma City want segregated schools. And I have in my hand the equity report, and I'm going to share that with our radio audience, and I want you to join me. And after about 5 minutes before I go off, I'm going to call you again because I want you to get the reaction from the people in Oklahoma City and from this report.
Okay, Ms. Luper, if I may, I would rather not comment, since we are arguing the case, on the report of the Equity Committee at this time.
Well, thank you so very kindly, and I will not call you, but you'll be in my thoughts. Thank you so much. Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
I told you to give me my flowers while I live. I told you that. I want my flowers while I live, and certainly I have some flowers. Ladies and gentlemen, Clara Luper will be a special guest at the United States Supreme Court on October the 2nd, 1990 in Washington, D.C. I will see 7 white men dressed in long black robes, 1 white woman dressed in a long black robe, 1 black man dressed in a long black robe, walk into the Supreme Court of the United States, and I will bring you one of the most thorough reports that you have ever received. When I return back to Oklahoma City, I've got to get out to Los Angeles, California, and I would like to publicly announce today that one of my children and one of my precious diamonds is getting married out in Los Angeles, California. Many of you know the story of George Farmer, a graduate of Dungy High School. And you know of the relationship that we have had through the years, because I used to have to whip George Farmer. I used to have to make him stay on that basketball team, and I go on down. But something happened. Through the years, we developed a friendship. And it was a kind of friendship where he used to call me his mother. And his mother respected me so much until it was unbelievable, because she used to tell George, all right, I'm going to tell Miss Luper on you. And George said, oh, she fusses too much. Please don't tell her. But it was an interesting story, and I think it's one that I could share with all of you out in Radio Land. Because Mrs. Farmer, George Farmer, Johnny's, Claudette's mother, moved to Detroit, Michigan, and she continued to write me, and she continued to get tapes of my radio show. And then one day I received a letter from her, which was probably one of the most grateful letters that I have received. She was thanking me for what I had done for her family, especially George. And in this letter she said to me, Clara, if anything should ever happen to me, I want you to take on my responsibility as a mother to my children. And through the years, I've tried to do that. I've tried to keep up with the Farmers. And maybe George has been closer to me than Johnny and some of the others, because even though he lives in California, he constantly stays in contact with me. And I know Mrs. Letty Ruth Hunter, Miss Fowler, and others will tell you when we were at the NACP convention how George came. And the Zetas could tell you about when I was out to the Boulé, how he came and the courtesies that was shown toward me. But George Farmer is going to get married. And it will be a large wedding. In fact, some 800 people will attend this wedding. And when I was out, he introduced his fiancée to me, who happens to be of another race, and he wanted to see how I felt about it. And I told George, as I tell my young people, that anything God did not want to put together, he made it biologically impossible. And if she loved George and George loved her, I think that was all that was needed. And he told her, well, I want my mama to be in on the planning of this wedding. Now, I'm happy to report that I've been in on the planning of the wedding, which will be on October the 6th, in a Christian church. Claudette's husband, who's a minister that's been with Billy Graham all over the country, will take charge of the services. And the reception is something that you could dream about. Oh, it's going to be quite an occasion. That's on October the 6th. So I will come back from Washington, D.C. and head out to George Farmer's wedding. And those of you that would like to extend greetings to George and wish him all of the luck in the world, be sure and let me know about it so I can take a package of good wishes from his classmates of Dungy High School and some of his friends here. You may call me at 424-3949. But this is NACP's membership day. This is a day that you are to renew your NACP membership. And you ask me why? Why should you renew your membership? Because you are intelligent enough to know that the NACP is a reason that Joey and others are down at OU now playing football. If it had not been for the NACP, they would have not had the opportunities that they are getting today. That's one reason. Another reason, you can ride anywhere on a bus or an airplane or a train because of NACP. Teachers are receiving the same salaries as whites because of NACP and that beautiful Emma Lou Freeman that made it possible. You can also say that now you can walk into hotels and motels and you can look like those Shriners looked the other night when they walked into Lincoln Plaza, looking good, just like Shriners and Masonic people should. All of those opportunities are yours because of the NACP. And now you can take out your membership. I would hate to be a black person or a white person who are beneficiaries of the NACP without being a member. That's why I want you to go up to Freedom Center, 2609 North Martin Luther King Avenue now and take out your NACP memberships. And while you are there, sit down to a good old home-cooked catfish dinner. If you love good catfish, the catfish dinners will be sold up there for the next 3 hours, and I want you to rush up and get you a catfish dinner. If you don't believe the catfish dinners are there, I will let you talk to Calvin Whitaker, who is there ready to serve you. I will let you talk to Mrs. Gloria Matthews, and she got some spaghetti up there that's out of sight. I want you to go to Freedom Center and show your support. Well, what will happen if you don't go? Well, we will miss you. We will miss you if you aren't there. This is the Clara Luper radio show, and I've just told you that George Farmer Jr. is going to be married on October the 6th, 1990 at 1 p.m. He will be married at the University Christian Church in Los Angeles, California. He's marrying the lovely Michelle Olivia. Michelle Olivia will become Mrs. George Farmer Jr. on October the 6th, 1990 at the University Christian Church. There will be a big reception which will be held at 5514 Garth Street, and I will be there. I will be at that big wedding, and I will also be at the Supreme Court on October the 2nd. This is the Clara Luper radio show. Now, I promised you that I would tell you about what's happening in Oklahoma City, because today we are going to have to make a decision. We're going to have to decide what side of the fence, each one of us, which side you are on. Now, I'm going to make my decision after I read to you some facts. We're going to look at some facts in the Dow case after this special announcement. Dr. Dowell's office is located at 934 Northeast 8th Street here in Oklahoma City. The telephone number is 2350536. That's Dr. A.L. Dowell, the top optometrist in this country. Dr. Dowell, 934 Northeast 8th Street. Please call him for an appointment. If you are receiving any kind of federal assistance, you will be able to get some special prices, and maybe you won't have to pay it all. Call Dr. Dowell, 2350536. If you just think that your child is having eye trouble, don't worry about it because you have not been trained in that area. Call Dr. Dowell, 2350536. The Appliance Care Center is located at 1320 Northeast 23rd Street here in Oklahoma City. They will repair your washing machines, your dryers. They will rebuild your air conditioners, your refrigerators, and what have you. All at Freedom Center. I have a very special lady out in Radio Land that's listening to me today, and I do hope that I have her name correctly. And if not, I would like for her to call me or her daughter. They were the first ones in this morning to buy catfish dinners, and I would like for them to call me because I think I left those specific names at the NACP office, 2609 North Martin Luther King Avenue. And I would ask them to call me because I want to know more about that, more about how they enjoyed the catfish. Now, if they do not call me, I promise you next week I'm going to tell you all about their names and everything else. This program is being made possible by Langston's Food Mart, located in Langston, Oklahoma, east on Highway 33. Those of you that like barbecue, you can get some barbecue out there this evening, and those of you that will be attending the game, after the game, go and get some barbecue and take some home to your lovely wife if she's not there with you. They have a full line of meat. They have a full line of groceries, and it's one of the cleanest grocery stores that I've ever been in. Located in Langston, Oklahoma, east on Highway 33. And tell Mr. Larry or Mr. Emmett Millhouse that Clara Luper told you about it. Now, they have a sister that's been being brought in from Chicago, Illinois to make a famous barbecue sauce. It's called Classy's Barbecue Sauce. Well, I'm so happy that Shelley is here with me today. And I know Shelley want to tell you about some of the games. And I want to especially hear her talk about that big game where John Marshall defeated Dale City last night for the first time in history.
I would like to congratulate the John Marshall Bears and especially Coach Ellis on defeating the Dale City Eagles last night.
Okay, well, tell me about Harrah, Oklahoma, and Northeast.
The weather was not on our side last night. Northeast lost to Harrah.
What were the scores?
48-0.
48-0 in favor of
Harrah.
Oh, that was not a loss, Shelley. That was I don't know the right word to say, but down in Hoffman, Oklahoma, they would say you got slaughtered last night. How long will it be before Northeast High School wins a big victory? Shelley?
I don't know.
Oh, good. You don't know, but I know one thing. I'll be out there looking, and I want to know because I want to tell everybody. And those of you, my Bears, those are a lot of my diamonds that's out there on that field running. And I told Mr. Ellis that if they win, I was going to have all of them for dinner. Let me tell you something, ladies and gentlemen. Before Clyde Ellis became the high school coach out there, they had 29 young men out for football. Now they have 75 on the team, 75 that's out, and they have 47 freshmen that are out. What can you say except go on, Clyde, go on to the top. And this Board of Education should be very proud of Clyde Ellis. Now back to NACP. Come home to NACP. Call 478-2103, or you may call the Freedom Center. You may call the Freedom Center, and that number is 424-2384. 424-2384. Get your catfish dinner. I tell you what, we're going to eat up all of those catfish. Thank you, Mr. Robert Gates, for eating catfish with us. We'd like to thank all those people over to the barbershop. We would like to thank the Johnsons. We would like to thank, and I can't call all of your names, but I want you to know that we appreciate your eating catfish with us. Now, I come to a sad story. It is the story of the Oklahoma City Board of Education, and the views here are not the views of this station. It is the views of your news reporter, Clara Luper. What actually happened under the court decision in 1985, the Oklahoma City Board of Education agreed to an equity committee. This committee was to see to it that the schools on the northeast side of Oklahoma City would receive the same kind of treatment that the schools on the northwest side of town would receive. Now, if you can remember in this case, the NACP stated very firmly that they did not believe that the Board of Education would afford the same services to the schools in the predominantly black area that they would in the predominantly white area. That was in 1985. Now let's go to 1989. The Equity Committee was asked to bring a report to the Board of Education. And the information that I will give you now will be taken directly from the Equity Committee's report. Don't take my word for it. Go down to the Board of Education and pick you up a copy yourself if they will let you have it. Now, the Equity Committee was to compare two sets of schools, a black school and a white school. They were to compare them on the basis of standardized test performance, the number of teacher contacts with parents, counseling services, educational field trips, pupil-teacher ratios, the percent of teachers with advanced degrees, the average number of years teaching experience, the number of retentions and suspensions, and the total school operating budget. Now, school, if I can remember, in 1989 started the last week in August. The Equity Committee met for the first time on January the 24th, 1990. Now, on July the 4th, 1989, the Equity Committee was to meet, but the meeting was canceled. On September the 20th, 1989, there was a meeting of the Equity Committee, but it was canceled. On October the 16th, 1989, the Equity Committee was supposed to meet, but it was canceled. On November the 15th, 1989, the Equity Committee was supposed to meet, and it was canceled. On December the 20th, 1989, the Equity Committee was to meet, but it was canceled. The first meeting was held on January the 24th, 1990. Now, the report that the Equity Committee turned in, the Board of Education rejected it and said, I do not want that report. Let us look at that report. Crescent Hills was paired with Buchanan School. As for the exterior building, it was worse. Yes, worse. Crescent Hill was compared with Buchanan. In reading, it was worse. Dewey was compared with Kaiser School, worse. Dunbar with Southern Hills, worse. Edwards with Quail Creek, worse. In math, the same thing was true, worse, worse, worse for the schools on the black side of town. Language, worse, 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 worse. Science, worse, 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 worse. Social studies, worse, 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 worse. Teachers' experience, worse, 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 worse. Teachers with advanced degrees in Crescent Hill, worse. Teachers' contact with parents, worse. Now, yet this Board of Education is going to stand up in front of the Supreme Court and say everything is fair in Oklahoma. Everything is ready to go. Let's compare King with Nichols Hills. That's interesting. Reading, worse, worse, worse. Math, worse, worse, worse. Language, worse, worse, worse. Social studies, worse, worse, worse. Now, I could go on down the line, but I want you to get this report and I want you to read it. Now, let me get to the sad part of the story. The sad part of the story is the fact that we had black people that worked for this plan, saying that everything was going to be equal. Let us look at 2 equals 2. Great. But then let us look even further. On the northeastern side of town, so many parents work not 1, but 2 and 3 jobs and are not able to attend PTA meetings. For example, on the northeast side of Oklahoma City, a PTA might raise $400. But on the northwest side of Oklahoma City, a PTA raised $17,000. On the northeastern side of Oklahoma City, where they had these beautiful adopt a school program, who on the east side of Oklahoma City was able to adopt a school? The money was with the big companies whose children were in schools on the other side of town. And guess who got the adopted money? The northwest side of Oklahoma City. Now, what is sad about this? It's sad, number one, because we had 3 members of the Board of Education that advocated and baited this community with those plans. They did it under the umbrella of neighborhood schools, and everybody knows that neighborhood schools really mean segregated schools because of the housing habits that has been put down from generation to generation. It's no secret that when white business people move to Oklahoma City, they do not move on the northeast side of Oklahoma City, and that's becoming true with the upper middle class blacks. How can you build a school system without patrons that are supporting the school? So what we are going to have to do is to look at the situation, and this is what we are doing now. Now, we had some people, some leaders in this community who went down and testified that neighborhood schools are all right. The schools are so integrated now they're able to stand on their own feet. Where are those leaders now? Where are the leaders of the neighborhood plan now? What are they saying? Have you seen them on television? Have you seen them on radio after 4 years, 5 years, telling you that the plan has worked? No! They have tape over their mouths. That's what happened. And then we are sitting up as parents talking about at-risk schools. We ought to be asking, why are we at risk? Why? I can tell you why, because we are back to a segregated school system from the first grade through the fourth grade. Now, if you look at the test scores on the other side of town, where they do have blacks on practically, their parents are from the kind of homes that the blacks over here are from, but they are doing well on tests. Why? What's the difference? Well, I want you to speak out. Now, let's check our list of people that's for neighborhood schools, which are black kids going to black schools and white kids going to white schools. I would like to call the roll. Ku Klux Klan, yes, I am in favor of neighborhood schools. White Citizens Council, yes, we want neighborhood schools. Some people, some black people, and this week I've been interviewed by news reporters from Chicago, Washington, D.C., New York City, Houston, Texas, Dallas, Texas, and they all ask me the same question. They say, Mrs. Luper, we have found since we've been in Oklahoma City that there are a large number of blacks that want neighborhood schools or segregated schools. What do you have to say about that? I say, if you would search history, you would find that there were a large number of white people during the Revolutionary period who did not want to pull away from England. They said it's all right for England to tax us. It's all right. Then if you would read the pages further, there were a large number of white people who were anti-constitutionalists. They did not believe that the United States Constitution would work. In fact, Rhode Island would not send any delegates to the Constitutional Convention. And go further in history, you will find that during the Civil War, there were many black people that didn't want to leave the plantation. And after the Civil War, they stayed on the plantation. If you would read a bit further, when Ada Loy Scipio was trying to get into Oklahoma University, there were many blacks who were saying, we don't want to go to that university. We won't have a fair chance. And then if you would read a little further, there were many black teachers when Emily Freeman tried to get the Board of Education to pay her the same salary that they were paying other teachers with the same qualification. They were saying, Emily Freeman should not talk like that. In fact, there were a lot of them had to go down to Roscoe Dungy secretly and make a contribution. And then, to bring it home, from 1958 to 1964, I stood on the streets of Oklahoma City, as many people out there in radio land. And there were people that came up and say, y'all ought to go home. We don't want to eat with these white folks. We don't want to go to their hotels and their motels. But let me tell the white people out there, the very ones that were talking were the first ones to run and get some meals in these hotels. They were the ones. And if you go around now, you can see. So don't tell me what black people are saying about neighborhood schools. And I would like to congratulate the people in Norman, Oklahoma that won the right for their children to ride on buses. Their children will be bused. And I would like to congratulate the state of Oklahoma that has proven our case beyond the shadow of a doubt when they set up a school for the gifted in Oklahoma City and placed the students that were to attend this school at Norman, Oklahoma, so they could be bused into Oklahoma City. Where are the anti-bus people? Have they said anything about, I don't think they should bus those little kids down in Norman, Oklahoma. I don't think they should bus those poor little high school students from Oklahoma University to Northeast 13th Street. Isn't that a shame? Therefore, today I'm calling on you. You may call me 478-2103 and tell me that you are one of the supporters of the neighborhood schools. Now, those of you that have told these reporters from all over the United States that you are in favor of neighborhood schools, I have some good news for you. They are preparing a booklet that will be circulated all over the United States. And in this booklet, they will be talking about black people that support segregation. I am certainly happy that my name is not on that list. It would be so embarrassing. When I think of, what will happen, you'll be spitting on Harriet Tubman's grave. You will be spitting in the face of Martin Luther King, Medgar Evers, and those that have died for freedom. Now you're going to have to take a stand. What does it all mean? It means that unless you live in a real world, in an integrated world, you have no place in this world because the world is integrated. When the students start out at an early age developing attitudes that put them in a position to deal with life as it is. And we hear a lot of talk, but now it's time to walk that walk. And Oklahoma City should get behind the NAACP and support us 100%. And we will see how much you care about us today as you go to the NAACP office and take out your NAACP membership. Talk will not do it. Well, what's happening? If we back up on the Supreme Court decision on October the 2nd, we can say goodbye to affirmative action. The people at the Veterans Hospital will continue to suffer because of racial discrimination, because of the fact that you have a man who's head of the hospital and also head of the Affirmative Action Committee. Black people will continue to suffer at Tinker Field. Yes, they will continue to suffer in the educational system of our state. They will continue to suffer because you took your stand. Those of you that will support NAACP, let's make it visible. Let's come out today and take out your NAACP membership so when we go to Washington, D.C. on October the 2nd, we can say that you are with us. Now, I have white friends that are really happy today, and if you go down to Edmond, Oklahoma, and tell them that integration is wrong and somebody's going to pull Foster out of that school, those white people out in Edmond would run you out of town because they say Chaz Foster is the most promising football player that has ever been in Oklahoma, and he is black. Now, once again, if you would go and tell the patrons at John Marshall High School that Clyde Ellis is not supposed to be teaching there and coaching there because he's black, those people would think you were crazy. I am for integration. I am for integration and not segregation. Thank God that we have some board members who are not willing to go back to segregated schools. This is the Clara Luper Radio Show. As we think now, it's time now for our funeral and death announcements. And today, a nation say goodbye to Miss Alphania Young. They say goodbye to Mrs. Young, who has served this community in all areas. And we know heaven is richer today because of Mrs. Young. Here's Onita with the funeral and death announcements.
Ross Funeral Home announces the following services. Services for Mr. Andre L. Fisher of 982 Southeast 15th will be Monday at 11 a.m. at the Allen Chapel AME Church. Funeral service for Mr. Nathaniel Teague of 1509 Northeast 14th will be Thursday at 11 a.m. in the chapel of the Raw Funeral Home. Temple Funeral Home announces the services of Mr. William Farmer of Oklahoma City will be Tuesday at 11 a.m. at the Mount Carmel Baptist Church. Temple Funeral Home announces the services of Mrs. Deborah Pettis of Oklahoma City will be 1 p.m. Monday in the chapel of the Temple Funeral Home. Funeral service from Mrs. Maddie Graham of Oklahoma City will be Tuesday at 11 a.m. in the chapel of the Raw Funeral Home. As we extend to the families this evening our deepest sympathy, may God comfort you at this time of sorrow and bless you through the days to come. And back to Clara.
Thank you, Onita. It was goodbye to Mrs. Christine Pollard, one of God's devoted children, who was laid to rest this past week. It was a quite tense crowd that gathered at the True Vine Baptist Church for the final services of Mrs. Pollard. It was a crowd that understood a mother, a patron of a community, a devoted Christian, a lady, Mrs. Christine Pollard. So kind, so courageous and so dedicated. I shall never forget the memories that I have of Mrs. Pollard. I shall never forget the fact that she would put her arms around me and say, Clara, I love you and I appreciate what you are doing and I want to help you. I shall never forget the smile on her face. Yes, Mrs. Christine Pollard went home to be with her God. And Reverend H.A. Walker put it so well that although she had a beautiful home and her daughter Betty Wedgeworth and her husband William had done everything in the world for her, had put her in their beautiful home and had wanted her to spend so much time with them. But she had another home, a home that was called a mansion that was not built by man. And she went home to be with God. And I do have a thank you note from the Wedgeworth family to all of our friends of the Fifth Street Baptist family, the True Vine Baptist family, the various churches from all over this country. We would just like to thank you for remembering us. You remembered us during the darkest days of our lives, and we shall never forget you. Thank God for you from the Wedgeworth family. This program is being made possible today by Marilyn Hildred, your Allstate Insurance agent. Calvin said if you need some pictures, call him. His telephone number is 236-3826. That's Calvin Luper. I've invited you to come to Freedom Center today. Come and take out your membership. Come and give your donation on the Black History Monument. And some of you have told me, Clara, I don't see the monument. Oh, yes, you do. He that hath eyes, let him see. Pass by Freedom Center and look at the pavement. Walk out there and look at the electrical wiring that has been done by Mike Anderson and the paving by Joe Orange. Then look at the picture of the monument. We cannot do the monument and finish the job until you do your part. It is not surprising then that one of the most beautiful women in Oklahoma, Mrs. Dixon, realized that something had to be done. And she sent her lovely daughter, Ardell, to the NACP Youth Council's office to pick up not one catfish dinner, but two. Thank you, Mrs. Dixon, for being a part of our family. And may God continue to bless you as you enjoy your children and your grandchildren. And today we are closer to building that monument because you cared enough. You cared enough, Mrs. Dixon, to become a part of it. And we are very happy to report to you, Mrs. Dixon, that your daughter said that she will be bringing her children to Freedom Center. And those of you that aren't allowing your children to work with the Freedom Center group, you're missing an opportunity. Because our young people are doing okay in their schoolwork. They have to. They have no other choice. Because it's no use of being a member of the NACP unless you're going all of the way with us. Thank you so much. We thank you, we appreciate you, and we love you. Today is our day. Today is a day that we can show the world whose side we are on. You know, it's an interesting thing. None of you neighborhood school people have called me out here today. My telephone number is 478-2103. I would welcome calls from the White Citizens Council, the Ku Klux Klan, and the black people that have joined forces with the neighborhood schools. And I want you to come by Freedom Center and look at this report yourself. And not only that, you don't have to do that. You go by all of the schools on the northeast side of Oklahoma City, take pictures of the playground equipment, then go on the northwest side of Oklahoma City, take pictures of all of the playground equipment, and then tell me if you are supporting Mrs. Betty Hill and her leaders as they try with your money to perpetuate segregated neighborhood schools. Betty Hill, don't you frill. Just come on out and look and tell the world and get Dr. Stella to confess that you have not done your job properly. As I look at the clock on the wall, I know it's time for me to say goodbye to you, but I really hate to say goodbye to you because we've been together so long. But it is a fact that we will have to say goodbye. And our goodbyes will only last as long as you would desire. Because every time I see you on the street and you wave at me, you smile at me, you have enriched my life and you have made my moments possible. Thank you, Oklahoma, for being a part of the Clara Luper radio show. And those of you that got me in Texas last week, you know I love you too. Until OU plays Texas, and then we have to fight it out. And until next week at 2 o'clock, this is Clara Luper saying, come on up and get that catfish. I'm ready to go. Let's go, let's go, let's go, let's go. Bye-bye. Stay out of trouble. You don't need to be part of a gang. All you need to do is realize that you are God's creation. Clara Luper saying bye-bye, and I do love you.
When I was growing up, my family, we didn't have a whole lot of money. My father worked at this little grocery down the street. I'd help him out in the stockroom after school.